What's going on, guys? Abraham here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the best worship keyboard rig of 2020. Let's talk. Now here at my local church, I'm not just the worship pastor, I'm also the main keys player. And I wanted to show you guys what I use every single Sunday and every single week in order to produce a great worship sound. Now, the first thing is the keyboard. Here we're using the Montage 8. Now, the Montage comes in the 6, the 7, and the 8 version. The only difference between them is the amount of keys that the keyboard will have. Now, if you're the main keys player, I recommend that whatever keyboard it is that you're using, that it has all 88 keys. The reason for this is because as a main keys player, your responsibility is not to produce electronic sounds or even really pad sounds. Your main focus is to produce a really good keyboard sound. And with 88 keys, you can go all the way up to your high notes and all the way down to your lower notes. The smaller the keyboard, the more limited in the range it is that you have. So in my opinion, I think that it's important that you have an 88 key keyboard. The next thing that I'm using is the Behringer X-Air 18. Now this is a powerful mixer that is very compact, and it's powerful for its size and also its price. Now the reason that I even have this mixer on stage with me is because I don't just send the sounds from my keyboard to the front of house mixer, I also send sounds from my laptop for click and track and for external keyboard sounds all into one place. So instead of sending my front of house like 10 different cables for left and right of each thing, I just put it all into one mixer, and then all I send is my main left and right for all my keyboards, whether I have multiple keyboards or I'm using the keyboard here and the sounds from my laptop as keyboards. I just send them a left and right, and then I also send them a left and right for my tracks, and I'm able to do all the mixing and all the EQs and all the stuff that I would need here on stage. I send that back to him and he knows it's ready to go. And that's the reason that I have this Behringer X-Air 18. Now, one thing that this Behringer is missing is that it doesn't have any physical knobs on it. You're not able to add volume or to mute or to add EQ without having either a laptop or a iPad to control it. For that reason, I use my MacBook Air. Now this is an old MacBook Air that was pretty beat up that I had at home. I had no use for it. And so I brought it here, and all its responsibility is to control the volumes, to add EQs, to add compression, to add mute, pretty much just to control this mixer. So you don't need to have a powerful laptop for this. This can be any laptop that can really run this program. So as you can see here, I'm able to add volume, I'm able to mute specific things, I'm able to change what is going through each aux channel, and you don't have to use a laptop. You can also use an iPad, as I mentioned before, but for me it's easy to just have a laptop sitting on top of this rack. Now the next piece of gear is my MacBook Pro. Now my MacBook Pro is very important to my setup because I'm not just sending all my tracks out through the MacBook Pro. What I'm also doing is I'm using this keyboard right here to not just play the sounds coming out of the keyboard, but I'm also using it simultaneously as a MIDI controller to play the keyboard sounds that are coming from my MacBook Pro. Now I know it sounds a little confusing, but I'll go a little bit more into detail later on in the video. But basically I use this MacBook Pro along with Ableton to control my tracks and to control my keyboard sounds. You don't have to use Ableton, and you don't have to use a MacBook Pro. As a matter of fact, if you have if you have a MacBook, you can also use GarageBand, you can use Logic. There's a bunch of different audio interfaces that you can use. In my experience, the best one and the easiest one for me to do what I'm trying to do is to use Ableton. And finally, I recommend that you get some sort of MIDI controller. In my case, I'm talking about the Akai Professional LPD8 Wireless. Now this is great because it lets me control all the parameters on Ableton directly from here, or at least all the parameters that I need to control directly on here. The worst thing that you want to be doing during worship is playing keyboard or giving your band cues while at the same time reaching over on your laptop trying to click a track or trying to bring down volume for something. It's easy if you can have all your parameters directly on here. Now this is beautiful because it has 8 drum pads that we're repurposing as MIDI triggers for tracks. So for example, I have track 1, 2, 3, 4. I could even do 5, 6, 7, or in my case, what I do is I normally have just 4 tracks, and then I have a pause and a play button. And that allows me to just, be able to use this when it comes to tracks. Now on this side of the MIDI controller, I have a couple of knobs that control different parameters on Ableton. For example, right here I have a knob called Keys. And on this knob, what it does is it controls the volume for my key sounds that are coming from Ableton. Now, the sounds that I like to use are from Keyscape and Ravenscroft, but you can use any one that you have. I also have another knob for my Rhodes sounds that control the volume for my Rhodes plugin, which the plugin that I use is Rhodes Affair. And then I have another knob for my pad sounds. Now, this pad that I have right here is a pad that I've built 100% through Ableton. I didn't buy it, I didn't get any plugins from anywhere else. I just used the plugins that Ableton comes with and the sounds that Ableton comes with, just stock. And I created a pad that personally I'm very proud of, and it gives me the sound of your, Jesus Culture style of pad, or Hillsong, or Elevation. It's a big, beautiful pad, which I'll demonstrate in just one second. And that's all the gear that I am using to run this setup. Now, let's get to what you have been waiting for, the sounds of this setup. Now, as I told you, I'm using the Montage. I love the sounds of this keyboard. As a matter of fact, you could just take away everything else and just leave me with this keyboard and I would be very happy. This keyboard is very powerful. It allows you to morph and merge multiple sounds at once, which gives you just a lot of power and a lot of depth and a lot of versatility. Now, I'm using right here a patch that I've created for just my everyday, I show up to church and we have to play a song. This is the patch that I'm calling up first. It has a piano and it has some violins in the background. It's a violin ensemble. Now, why do I use violins instead of pads? The reason for that is because I think sometimes we can tend to overuse pads. I think today, specifically in worship, you hear pads in every song, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I like to spice things up a little bit. Now let me show you what my piano sounds like. This is just my piano without any violins, without any pads, nothing else, just the piano. It sounds like this. This is a beautiful piano, in my opinion, probably one of the best that I've heard from the Yamaha lineup and even from the Nord lineup. At my other church, I do use the Nord Stage 2, but here, this is the piano that we have here at this church. So this is my favorite piano sound on this piano. Now, as I mentioned, I like to add violins. The reason for that is because when someone's speaking or when I'm ministering or someone else is praying, you don't just want to have just piano because it'll sound dry. You either want to add some pads or some violin. Now, again, in my case, I like using violins a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of violin right here, and I'll play you what it would sound like if I'm playing piano and violin. And then at the end, I'm going to take out the piano and just leave the violin in, so you can see what it would sound like if someone's just preaching or someone's, just praying and you want to add a little bit of atmosphere. This is what that would sound like. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't just use the piano sounds that are found on this keyboard. I like to also merge some of the sounds that I have bought and that I use in Ableton. So let me show you a little bit of what that sounds like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play just the keyboard, again, the same keyboard that I played you just a little bit ago, but I'm going to add in a little bit of pad just to show you what it would sound like to run both of those things simultaneously through your same sound system. All right, so let me show you guys what that sounds like. So what I was doing there is I was playing the piano sounds that I found on the montage, but I'm merging it with the pad sound that I built on Ableton. Now I can do that again by using this Behringer XAir 18 mixer, because it's coming in with multiple channels at once, and I'm just sending those out through two left and rights that go to my front of house. That's all that I have to do to be able to merge all these sounds together. Now, for example, if I'm playing something a little bit more gospely, a little bit more upbeat, what I can do, or old school, what I can do is I can go to my electric keyboard sound that I have here, my Rhodes sound that I have, and it's a mix of Rhodes and electric keyboards that I've kind of put together just using the montage. So this is no sounds coming from my laptop, it's just from the montage. Let me show you what that sounds like. It sounds a little bit like this. Now that was something a little bit more funky, a little bit more gospely, but let me show you with the exact same sound that I could play something, a little bit more, a little slower, but still along the gospely side. It would sound a little bit like this. Now again, that was played with two electric pianos and two Rhodes that you can find on the montage. But let's say I get invited to another church and I don't have my montage with me because it's very heavy. Let's say I want to have something similar to that. Well, here on Ableton, I actually have another sound that's called a Rhodes Affair. And what Rhodes Affair allows me to do is a plugin that has different Rhodes sounds that I think are really cool. And all I have to do is turn up the volume that's found here on this MIDI keyboard. So let me show you what that sounds like. Now I can do that by simply just adding volume from my MIDI controller, which is controlling my Ableton sound, and just bringing down the volume of this montage. I don't at any point have to switch presets or anything like that. It's all pre-done for me, so all I have to do is just control volumes through this MIDI controller. Now, I think if you merge Ableton sounds with whatever sound you have on your keyboard, it's a very powerful setup that you can achieve. You can literally have any sound that you want to have going through your system. So if you hear a specific sound, from a Hillsong Young and Free record, you can either make it on your piano or you can make it in Ableton, and then just simply turn up the volume and use your piano as a MIDI controller, assuming that it's plugged in via USB to your computer. This gives you a lot of options when it comes to playing piano. And it doesn't just apply to a main piano player, it also applies to even an auxiliary keys player, because you can use the sounds that are found, whether it's on a physical keyboard, or you can use the sounds that are found on Ableton or some sort of other DAW or plugins that you've bought in the past. So these are the sounds and the gear that I use at my church to create a beautiful worship sound. But I do want to make a point clear, and that is that you do not have to have the montage to be able to sound incredible, or you don't have to have Ableton or these specific plugins in order to have a great worship sound. All you really need to have is a solid keyboard that has some sort of reverb, some sort of EQ, and a little bit of delay, and that's pretty much all that you really need. So it's always about doing the best with what you have. But on that note, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you're able to take some of these techniques and apply them at your church. Please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.